All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Herman Marks will lead us in our invocation and pledge.
Thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to come together. We thank you for each person that's here. We appreciate the importance that they bring in their duties. We ask now that you be with the city council and others as they think about the items that are before them. We ask now that you continue to bless us, that you've done, and help us to be public servants that you'd be proud of. We ask this in your name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Herman. Roll call.
Ladner.
Here.
McMasters.
Here.
Jackson. Pike.
Here.
Pepper.
Here. All right, we do have one item on the printed agenda, and then we'll have an additional item. Do you want to do the vacation first? Is that easier for you?
Well, it would be easier.
Okay,
I
that's
think,
fine.
for everybody. But
Go
yeah,
ahead.
it's short for me since I'm already up.
All right,
I don't want to waste when I'm getting up.
go for it.
All right. Basically, we were made aware of a planning department and the legal department. Hugh Wright McAnally and Barney Lovelace, there is a closing at the Barron family real estate closing on Thursday. They've got an out-of-town purchaser that's flown in. So what this does is vacate approximately 2/10 of an acre. This is in somewhere behind the CVS on the belt line and the car wash that closed. So they're asking that we go ahead, and it's been through the planning commission. They're asking that we approve the vacation today so they can close on Thursday. And that's what this does. It's 2/10 of, as I said, 2/10 of an acre. And by the way, y'all don't have to vote on it, but we get a replacement easement, or Decatur Utilities does, to replace this easement we're vacating. And we've got a separate document that does that.
So moved.
Motion by McMaster, second by Pike. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ladner.
Aye.
McMasters.
Aye.
Pike.
Aye.
Pepper.
Aye.
That is
Yeah,
approved
thank y'all
4-0.
Thank you. They'll be so happy, and we will be too.
All right, next is the resolution on the printed agenda, Resolution 23-234, adopt FY24 job classification and pay plan revisions effective 10/2/23. Michelle.
Good morning, Rochelle Fallon, Human Resources Department. As is the duty and responsibility of the Personnel Board under the legislation that established the roles of the Board and the Council, and as per the merit system, the Personnel Board reviewed and approved the following recommendations for the FY24 budget year. The Board is in support of a 3% cost of living adjustment to the entire job class pay plan, a predicted increase in the employee health premium that we expect. We don't know what that's going to be yet till probably mid-September. We budgeted 5%. We have been made aware that the RSA has extended an employer contribution rate increase of just under 2%. And in the interest of aligning our job class pay plan with the 2018 comprehensive initiative and sustaining our market relevancy, the board has supported some recommendations for pay grade reclassifications. With the exception of the firefighter job category, the movement of the employees in those job classifications would typically be lateral with some limited exceptions for equity. And what do I mean by alignment? Just as for those who might not have been here or don't remember, in 2015 when I got here, we were on 11 step, 5% between 11 grade, 5% between each step pay structure that was about 10 years stagnated. Many of the same issues we hear about today, compression behind market, still exists. We brought in a plan in 2018 that was market sustainable and comprehensive, which meant it alleviated a lot of compression between job categories. That plan was presented and approved with a very clear and specific guidance that it would require an annual review for cost of living just to keep it market relevant, and that could be anywhere from 1% to up, depending on the market. The comprehensive review should occur for any pay plan every 3 to 5 years, or we hit year 4 last year with the 2022 review. They tend to become obsolete in about 10 years, and in my experience in both the private and public sector, that compensation plan development administration does hold true to that. The market shifts, jobs changes, things like that. A healthy compensation planning management should include a pulse review every year We continue to do that just to stay ahead of the curve. The slide left in the administration of the plan in the early years where cost of livings were not adjusted on a regular basis. Our limited scope adjustments tend to push the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2018 a little out of alignment. So part of our recommendation is the intent to realign so that we can sustain that comprehensive plan for another 5 years. And let me just say that these recommendations were made to the Personnel Board based on a great deal of thought, firsthand experience, and an intimate working knowledge of the pay structure's history, revisions, and administration, the day-to-day operational understanding of the workforce resource needs, the applicant pools, and the strategic vision for attrition and recruitment. The board reviews these considerations and approves them based on a collective 50 years of experience with the city's workforce management initiatives, including the pay scales. And we do our best to remain objective in the focus, and we don't make these recommendations lightly. I believe everyone here knows that. It just needs to be said. With the board's approval, we recommend that the cost of this plan be approved and funded by the FY24 budget with an effective date of October 2nd. Included in your resolution package is the highlights of the resolution. We've included a summary table of the total all-in impact. That's COLA, predicted health, RSA, everything across the system. We've also included a brief summary of what the market adjustment or the pay grade reclassifications, what those impacts are. And I'll finish up by saying I appreciate the mayor, Kyle, and Herman, and the board and their support as we work through these very complex and very challenging and sometimes emotional issues. We appreciate the time of the majority of you for visiting with me a couple weeks ago so that you could learn more about the methodology and the intent behind the recommendations and sharing your feedback. And now your consideration. And on behalf of city employees, and I think it's important to acknowledge that this council has done a fantastic job helping support our initiatives to realign that pay structure, and that should be appreciated and acknowledged. And on behalf of our employees, we thank you for that, and I thank you for listening to all of that, and I hand it off to you.
All right, thanks, Rochelle. We have a motion to put it on the floor. Motion by Mr. McMasters.
Second.
Second by Mr. Pike. Any discussion?
I have a couple of questions. First question. So the areas that are highlighted are the proposed pay increase, correct?
Pay grade changes.
Pay grade
yes.
changes. Okay, so the area that's in gray is obviously not. Those are the current ones that we have. So if an individual is paid the minimum on the current plan and then the proposed plan is passed, would their current minimum pay be raised to the proposed?
Depends on the position that we're talking about. So specifically with fire, since the interest is here in the room, a firefighter will move into the newly assigned pay grade at a step equal to their current pay rate, and then there'll be equity adjustments based on whether they're going to compete with a new higher step or seniority.
So what about, excuse me, which one are, gracious, I can't clear this one. What directors would receive an immediate increase in pay?
Did not bring that with me, but if there's an increase in pay, it's because their movement from their current pay grade, their current salary is below the minimum of the new pay grade, they would immediately move to that first step.
So for instance, the director of Parks and Recreation
Would
is
not
at
see,
pay grade of 25 and it's gonna go up to 26.
would not see a pay change. Would see
No,
it,
not this year.
right, they would see earning potential on the end of toward the end, or the back end of their career.
Okay.
One example, and he's in the room. The CFO position based on the market is significantly graded below the market where Kyle sits today in salary. If this is approved, he would move into the next pay grade, and it would be an increase because he would move to the starting point of that new pay grade, which is above his current salary. There's 2 or 3 like that.
That's good. Okay.
I think DYS is one
Yeah,
that would.
DYS, what's the other one? Police chief,
Yes.
thank you.
You had a total of, is it 36 positions that would change in FY '24?
That was the other, that was the non-public safety.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I brought that. As you can see, it's a lot of that. So,
I guess I'm going to the part excluding fire. Okay.
yeah,
Out of those
36
36, out of those
positions.
36, how many would you consider entry level?
But I would, this is just my opinion, I think I would be careful about just saying, I mean, we need to consider not just for next year. I mean, that's,
Well, and that's, I agree, but, you know, when we're moving some of these things around, it's, do we have a recruitment or retention problem within that segment?
yeah, but this will impact the cost in forever.
Future
Oh,
years.
100%.
So, I get we're talking only this small an amount for this year, but don't lose the fact that it
See,
greatly
that's,
increases.
that's my biggest concern is, you know, we're looking at an all-in cost of roughly 2.9 this year.
That's everything.
That's
COLA, health plan doesn't
COLA,
include
health,
overtime.
RSA, retirement, but
Make a note that the landfill piece is in there and that's separate.
That's right.
But it's pretty minimal, it's about,
I mean, what is that, you know, right now, we're at what, 60% of our budget roughly is personnel,
58 last year,
58 last year.
but it
This
will
would
be
put us
between
over 60.
62 to 65.
It'll be between 62 to 65 if this passes. Is that in line with other municipalities?
I've had very small conversations with a lot bigger cities that have significant, or in that range, I'd say, within 5 to 10%.
It was not lower.
Higher, correct.
And,
The other
and,
municipalities were higher.
and I would point out that those or that particular municipality, I think we're probably talking about the same one, was extremely concerned about that.
Yes. But when we brought this up at a Big Ten meeting, this was discussed, we all had the very similar heartburn, and we all had very similar, ranges of percentage to budget with the labor conversation we're having.
And we've got 515 budgeted positions.
590 full-time positions.
How many of those are currently vacant?
That's my next question.
And then, you know, the next question after that
I
is,
know police has how many? 22, so we're probably around 70 vacancies.
how many of those have been vacant for extended periods of time?
The police vacancies, the parks and recreation, maintenance positions, and a couple of the admin assistant positions. We do have, where we talk about applicant pool per capita, we get far more applicants for our public safety than we do for those positions. Our truck drivers will see one applicant a month. They'll post a position and see 40 to 50. Now, you know, you factor in the selection to make sure you're getting the right candidate.
With non-public safety openings, have we gotten to a point where we're thinking about just doing away with them? You know, if we've had them open for 3 or 4 years, have we noticed a drop in service? I mean, Jason's not in here, but, you know, non-public safety.
You say no,
You know,
we're just
that's
seeing an
well-
increasing cost.
I think we see an increased cost in temp labor, overtime.
It's case by case. I think it's hard to answer that question, from a 1,000-foot without talking to every individual department. I know we've had conversations throughout the budget hearings, specifically the 3 of us when we met with HR, with discussions too, as we have retirements or individuals leave the city, really tasking our department heads to look at our head count and look at kind of the operations of their department and making that determination of, is it important to fill this position or could we potentially reduce head count and be able to.
Remain as efficient as we have.
And
We are introducing, a lot more technological efficiencies that help, that cost less on that end. It doesn't make sense to have the technology and the people if we're not, it's a waste, I guess is what we're
And we
saying.
s-
But it's hard to say overall. It is case by case.
Are we having a retention problem with the
No.
city hall?
Overall, I would say no. In certain positions, I would say yes. We'll hire, accountant will be a perfect example. We'll hire one and within 6 months, we get a resignation, they're moving off to somewhere else.
So it's important that the council realizes that, as the CFO mentioned, CFO, HR, or Ms. Sandlin, we sat down and looked at positions where whenever they become open, that we might be able to not fill those positions. And, you know, we hear that maybe the council might see us being overstaffed. Really, we don't see that. We see where with the advancements in software like CityView and things like that, where some changes can be made, and in other departments. Another something that I think it's, I would ask, can we afford this?
I mean, I answered that question at the personnel board, and I still hold true that we can support it.
Could
So,
we afford more?
I mean,
it's,
I guess I'll say this, when the mayor and I sit down to start creating the budget, it's always been the top priority to look at taking care of the employees. So,
through COLA typically.
whatever way we've had conversations about non-COLA things to take care of employees. But that is basically our foundation we start with, and then we go throughout the whole process with every single department head with operational needs, capital needs, and even talking about like big dream things that each person wants to do. And you kind of build up, and you'll see here in September when I bring the budget, we hope to have the personnel piece in that first round with a gap between expenses and revenues to allow you all to go through that P2 list and be able to fill that gap.
So let me,
Rochelle,
sorry, go ahead.
I think that we as a council also have, in discussions from 2020 to today, have said, start the budget with a COLA.
Agree. I'm
Right,
not saying
so-
y'all didn't support that.
And that has not always been the case.
I do.
Right.
I do.
Yeah, and I'm saying so do we. So,
let me ask you, so if we're not having a retention issue, except for in certain areas, why didn't we look at just doing an adjustment to those positions?
Because it's not the plan is a comprehensive plan. It's not as, it's a little more complex to just start moving positions around, because the more you push them up, the more you see compression and the more we see issues.
So this
It's a holistic view.
Rochelle, would you agree with the mayor that he just made the comment about not being overstaffed? We do think, would you agree with that we're not?
I would agree that there needs to be a little more open-minded evaluation of our resources as we move forward through attrition, through reorganizing as we have a parks and recreation. I do know that the majority, by and large, the majority of our employees work really hard. We do see upticks in overtime. We do see a pretty significant cost for temp labor. So that could be the offset to a lack of resources. Can we be more efficient 100% in a lot of our areas? Sure
So
can.
besides public safety, I'm gonna put that on hold just for 1 second. Who, I don't want to point fingers at anybody, but out of the pay increases, which departments would you say would receive the highest increase in their current pay?
Outside of public safety?
that's on that list.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, so,
That's what this one is.
let me add, last
There's an
year,
11%.
we asked about doing a market analysis. We did another market analysis this year,
No,
or was this the Pulse review?
this is the pulse review.
So could you tell me what the increase was percentage-wise from last year across the board? Is there an average across the board? So you're seeing salaries increase X percentage over last year's
In the
analysis?
market group, from the time we did our market review to this year, when everything changed in October, that we predicted a 5%, we saw 6.5%, and 8% in some areas. So on average, the increase was 4.5% across the market data.
I want to continue on with what I was sharing a while ago. Another something that I want to ask the council to take into consideration, and it might be that you're doing that, is that we're, as mentioned, the personnel board was set up by a legislative act. And we appreciate our personnel board and their service to the city. Most on the personnel board have a HR background. Nora isn't with us today, but some of our board members are here. Some have served for many, many years. And then, of course, we have Ms. Sandlin, who serves as our Human Resources Director. And how many years of service do you have in?
8 years with the city, 30 private and public.
Okay. So with that, we have a city attorney, and whenever he provides legal advice, we follow his legal advice. We have a police chief, we have a fire chief. You see the route that I'm going here. These are professionals that are making recommendations to the city, to the council on some adjustments that need to be made. They wouldn't just make these to you, to us, willy-nilly. They come with a great amount of thought and responsibility in their roles. And so I hope as you ponder this, you take that into consideration.
So
I definitely
I
think
don't-
we have to take that into consideration, but I would also say probably at any time we've objected to something that each of our directors has brought to us.
and I'm not
Specifically, but
I'm not
certain
saying
it's
that
happened.
we're denying anybody's credentials here. We're not tearing down anybody's credentials here. Obviously, you've got more experience in this field and been doing it longer than I've been alive. Obviously, some of the rest of us on the council. So we're not trying to hate on you there, but we're not denying we're not denying your credentials here, nor anybody else's. But I see a need, obviously, for certain departments to receive a raise. I'm all for certain departments receiving a raise. I'm for everybody receiving a raise if it's necessary. But there are certain positions, to my understanding, that are going to get a significant increase in their pay. And I'm not going to specifically state those positions, but I am going to say that those certain positions, in my opinion, do not necessarily need to receive a massive jump in pay. As the mayor said, usually whenever somebody from a department head comes and says, this is what we need, and then we'll look at it and we'll tear through it and do what we can to figure out, what's necessary. We never deny anybody's credentials. And I think that.
Rochelle, are you done?
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Last year we looked at a very similar plan, very similar. And one of the discussions was around benefits. And I think there was discussion about seeing what our benefits package is valued at. Do we have that? Have we done that?
I think you provided some of that information last year, and while I would say it is very competitive and better than some, it's not like a significant dollar, in my opinion. I mean, when you look at it compared, it's better, but you're talking minimal dollars, in my opinion.
So in answer to your question, we do have a robust group health plan or group benefit package where we've seen the shift. Before all of our time was the city at some point in time decided to no longer fund retiree health benefits after a certain point of time. It's a little unique. There are other agencies that do fund it, not at the healthy level the city did. There's a little more of a challenge there. We see a very high copay, high deductible health plan. Low premiums, that's a trade-off. You either pay higher premiums, have low, so across the local government, we have a predominantly healthy workforce, so the decision was made to keep the premiums low, but that does have the higher copay deductibles. The cost share, historically the city had a little more robust strategy for paying for 100% of the premiums. We've seen some, shift in that. We still pay a very low premium as a workforce. We hear it especially with the folks who come in new to the city, come from a private sector. They're, oh my gosh, we pay $500 a month. You pay $160. So it is a very robust, healthy plan.
Okay.
Which I would say is common with public.
Yes, very common in public. So to finally come back around to it, we see the fringe benefit ratio to be between 45 and 55%, depending on seniority and where you sit in the retiree health versus RSA 1 and all that.
Do you know if the 3% COLA portion of this, would that bring, any of those jobs that are currently below, will that 3% bring any of them within that range of market? I don't know,
Across the system, which is where my initiative is, across the system, it will bring all of our positions within second in the market compared to Athens.
That 3%.
I guess.
The 3% plus the recommendations.
Okay, that's very important because that's not his question.
Yeah.
Okay, what was your
Well,
question?
I doubt she knows that off the top of her head. What if we did only the 3%? Look, I'll just say, when you and I talked early on about this, I've been for a COLA every year, will continue to be for a COLA. But I also specifically asked about the fire department. That's a conversation that Chief Thornton and I had, and Jacob, was there at lunch one day when this first started. So to get the plan back and there'd be additional positions, I'll tell you, my stance right now is a 3% COLA, include the COLA and address fire separately. That's where I'm at, but I am curious if you could look and let me know what 3% would do across the board. Would it pull, and it may not pull any of them up, but I am curious if it would pull any of those other positions within.
That's also gonna be my recommendation. I'm not gonna support an across-the-board market adjustment. I will support a 3% COLA. I'll even support a 4% COLA if somebody's got a motion for that one, but currently 3% is on the board right now, so I'll support a 3% COLA and a market adjustment for fire.
I just have a couple of comments. My concern is the compounding effect. So say we pass the market adjustment, people need to realize those numbers on the page are for this year. And so if we give another COLA next year, those adjust by whatever percentage that is forever. Every year there's a COLA, that whole plan bumps up that percentage, and that there's a real compounding issue there, in my opinion, when you're looking at a blanket increase like this is. In FY 2018, our total personnel cost budgeted was just under 36 million. This year we're looking between probably 53 and 55 million for total personnel costs. That's very concerning. And I agree with all the comments about, you know, the board but we have a responsibility to take into account everything, not just personnel. And that's the same with a private sector board of directors that would get a plan just like this, and has to look at it and go, how does this affect the bottom line holistically? I think the mayor has pointed out multiple times that when he took office in 2016, the entire general fund budget was $45 million. And we're looking at potentially 55 million around that number just for personnel this year, 7 years later. So that is concerning. That's a trajectory like this that, in my opinion, is not sustainable really at all.
It's outrageous.
And I would say, in with this, when we, personnel board meeting in January where we approved the change to the police pay, it was just the police, there might have been some other
It was
issues.
very similar to what we're doing here.
So who else was involved in that besides the police?
Truck drivers, equipment operators.
CDL, yes.
Equipment operators, laborers.
It was the hard to recruit positions. So we did that, and at that meeting, Chief Springer stood up and talked about where the fire department fell in the, you know, our kind of local markets, and it was last as far as entry-level pay. I don't think if you go through the whole list, everybody was last, but your point was valid. And I think I said at that meeting that we had already started discussions with Chief Thornton. Kyle and I had a discussion with him and started the track to get to where this plan is today. I remember Mr. Gilmore asked us to fix that issue. He said that's not right for the fire department to be in that spot, and I assured him we were working on it. And then that then left, in my opinion, the council's responsibility, and was worked on by leadership in the fire department with the HR director. And then we landed with 230 odd positions or something. I'm not sure the exact number.
No, it's not 230, but go ahead.
Two something.
No.
Way more than just the fire department. So, again, I committed that day, I felt like, to helping fix that issue in the fire department. It felt like the personnel board agreed with that. I think everybody in the room seemed to agree with that, and that's where I still am today. And I really have concern about the trajectory. This will be the highest percentage of budget ever for personnel compared to the rest of the general fund. At least, well, I'm looking back to 2016, and that's tough, and it's going to continue. And that's in great economy, really, the last couple of years where we've had a lot of We've been flush, and if you listen to like Senator Orr and others in Montgomery, they've been warning about this from the state level. You know, spending money on things that continue to compound and have additional cost. There's some real danger there because that's eventually gonna dry up. I do support a 3% COLA for everyone, but as far as market adjustment, I think what we committed to that day in January was to make sure our public safety both were competitive with second place. I know it's not first, but Huntsville's a beast, so we're that's tough to compete with them, but that's where I am today.
So why did we do a market study across the board?
She didn't.
Because that's my job, first of all, but we didn't. We did the market study last year at year 4, when you should do them every 3 to 5. We do a pulse look every year to make sure that we're not missing something, you know, that we're still ahead of, not ahead, but we don't see any outliers that we need to adjust to.
I did have a conversation just anecdotally with Madison's HR director and then one of their employees, and I know that they were going to look at doing a market study, and their council said no, probably for this very reason, that it just was becoming unsustainable. So anyway, that's where I'll land today.
Well, just listening to the discussion that's taking place, I have some bullets, but it sounds like a decision's been made, so I'll just.
Happen when we make the vote.
Let me share, I think, a very important thing. So you'll know before you vote. The mayor touched on it. The board is set up by state legislative act. They make a recommendation. If you don't want to accept that, then you make information back to them so they can bring you another recommendation. Without a recommendation from the board, the council cannot move forward.
We want a 3% COLA and a market adjustment for fire as a recommendation.
Well, let me ask, while I'm up here, let me ask this. If you've got other positions, I'm not talking about overall, if you've got other positions that are 5th place or out of 5, do you want to look at that or just say?
Here's Herman, and this is my.
I'm asking.
Yeah.
I first shared it, I just wanted to.
I said this last year, and I'll say this. I mean, most of y'all were in here last year when we had this discussion, and really not much has changed for me. So I'm sure y'all are. One thing changed, but it was something we discussed around public safety, and I appreciate you guys working with us on that. But when I worked at a company that had about, I guess 700 or 800 employees, and when we looked at pay, one issue, for example, we had was were developers, web developers, .NET developers. Brad's back there, whatever that means. Very high demand, a lot like CDL has been the last few years, and we had to adjust their pay to be able to recruit. Our customer service reps were probably on the low end of our market in the banking world, but we didn't adjust that pay because there was not a big demand, but we had to for the jobs where there was a real demand. So that, anytime we can bring somewhat of a private sector discipline to the public sector, I think that's good. And again, I would point back to just the trajectory of the cost of personnel to the city's overall budget is very concerning for the long term. And we just need to those costs stay and then compound up. They don't usually go down. So that's my concern. But I appreciate
I was just curious, so the board would know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it sounds like that they have more work.
I think whether we pass this or not, if we had passed the one last year, honestly, if we had passed the one last year, these numbers would be even higher. But no matter if we pass this or not, we're always adjusting to pay and competition. So I think we're going to be dealing with this every year, to be honest with you. I mean, we're going to have positions we have to look at. It just is the nature of personnel, whether it's public or private. It's always changing. People are given different raises in our different municipalities, and the demand for certain jobs. The CDL thing was not an issue 3 years ago. It really became an issue 2 years ago. I mean, that changed really fast. Public safety, people used to grow up wanting to be police officers. That's changed. People used to want, you're having less applicants every time. I mean, we have to react to that. It's kind of a reactive thing. If you're proactive, then you become really bloated. And so you're always gonna be reacting. That's just the nature of personnel. And I'm one guy, and that's my opinion. But, that's where I would be. But to answer your question, yes, I think we always will go back and look at those positions, no matter where they are, and see if there's a real competitive, whether it's experience or degrees or certifications that we really need to be recruiting. We may need to adjust those pay.
Well, I guess for the board purpose, do you want to do that this year? Or do you
I think to be honest with you, if that conversation had started a while back, but I think your last board meeting is when this was passed. So we're kind of up against, but I think as we move along, if there are positions that are really competitive that we need to be looking at, I'm certainly open to that. I think for this year, I would agree with what Mr. Pepper had put forward.
So just so we're clear, I started off with setting fire aside and focusing on those other positions, but in the budget that we'll present to the city council, it includes market adjustment for fire, and just want to be sure that that's noted.
Yeah, well, in the city budget, we'll include the 3% and pay grade adjustments, and to be clear, there will have to be some adjustments in the original proposal to the board, so I'll address that with the board this week, because some of those recommendations were based on the compression issues we see by these limited scope transactions that create these issues. So.
And I know this question's hard to answer, and Kyle, this is more geared towards you. So we're budgeting for 590 positions, correct?
Yes.
We have 70 vacancies.
I will have to check my files on
We
that.
show roughly
Yep.
70 vacancies.
Yep.
So,
With a large majority in our police department, which we all are aware of.
right, it's what, 20, 21, 22?
It's really not that many, is it? 22? Okay.
Well, I mean, it's almost half.
Don't we-
Yeah, it was 40.
We've got recruitment efforts for them though.
Guys, that's not, we're doing very well considering where we were last year. So, and I think Chief would echo that. And I think that has a lot to do with the recruiting efforts as well as the leadership of the department.
That's, and the reason you're not seeing, the question comes back to, are we seeing turnover? Our department directors and those within the departments do a lot to create a wonderful culture to work in here for the city of Decatur. And that has a lot to do with the lack of turnover. People stay with us in spite of the compensation because they enjoy being here.
Yeah, I would agree, and I've worked for the organization I mentioned earlier, always said we are not going to be the highest paid, but we're going to be the best place to work, and with leadership that you want to work for, we had almost no turnover, so I think that translates for sure. All right, sorry, did you have a question?
It's probably anywhere between total comp, probably 75 to 100 per. Right? Depends, because if you have a higher level position, it'll be higher, but if you have a lower one, it'll be lower. But the RSA cost and the healthcare costs are pretty significant.
There's, I hadn't given my thoughts, everybody else has. I struggle with some of this, some of it. We do have 70 vacancies, so this number should be reduced. What Council President Ladner and Pico said about this being a compounding number, that's something that raises a lot of concern. What I see happening is we're reacting to the 2018 plan. We saw it our first year, we saw it our second year, we're seeing it this year. That we're always trying to figure out which direction to go in. I don't agree with all of this, but if I've got a CFO sitting here who can tell me that he doesn't have massive heartburn over this, I think we're gonna be revisiting, and it's, again, back to your point, we're gonna be looking at this year after year after year after year after year, and maybe we should. But I just have, when we did what we did with police, he's still 22 down. I'm gonna support this because I don't necessarily wanna pull an entire department and tell everybody else, just the way it's.
So what are some of the roles that, what are some of the roles that are vacant? Out of the 70, besides the 22 police officers, what are some of the roles that are vacant?
So I have an HR, professional degree HR vacancy that we're recruiting for, not getting a lot of applicants for. Accountant, we're probably gonna have another vacancy there. Senior level admin support, we're looking at some tech, some IT type folks. Fire has 3 vacancies, I think, for entry-level firefighter. And we have a gentleman who's coming back, who actually left, who wants to come back. And then, y'all help me, a lot in Parks and Rec with the maintenance folks, the labor folks. It's just a very competitive market with a very low candidate pool. Truck driver, yes, equipment operators in streets.
Who has the highest amount of vacancy in a department besides the police department?
I would say equipment operators in the street department at this point,
The street department has the highest amount
and park maintenance.
in park maintenance, okay.
Carl, whenever you raised your hand, was that the streets?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which all those vacant positions also get the raise. And the
Not,
COLA.
well, they would get the COLA.
The COLA.
They do not, they're not in this plan. They were in the first plan in January.
So I
Well,
want to
they've
add,
been addressed.
I want to add to something you said about certain individuals. It's key to remember that when we're doing this, there's no names tied to the positions. So this also aids into future recruiting efforts that could happen. I think we have over 100 employees that are technically eligible to retire. And so if you see a big shift in new from old, we have to be competitive in order to, because essentially what's gonna happen is, you know, say all of a sudden we have a mass exodus in fire and chief comes with a whole bunch of vacancies, we have to be competitive to be able to hire those folks, which is what we're doing. But that same situation can be applicable to multiple departments other than fire.
So in the street department, you said you've got 5 to 6 vacancies. Out of the, what are those, like, specific job titles in general? Equipment operators. Would you say that our pay is competitive compared to everybody else? Is it within the North Alabama region on equipment operators?
Well, definition of competitive is a little iffy, but we are better than we were, we'll say that.
Are we anywhere close to where everybody else is in North Alabama, to a city comparable to
I
our
would
size?
say we're close, yes.
If you see a market adjustment, it's us making an effort not to be last or second last. The same conversation that's had in fire, we have in the same conversation with all the other positions.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion? All right, we do have a motion and a second. Roll call?
Ladner.
No.
McMasters.
Aye.
Pike.
No.
Heffer.
No.
All right, that resolution fails with a vote of 1 in favor, 3 against. Is there anything else from council?
Yeah, what do we need to do for the?
I think we made the
Okay,
recommendation.
okay, I was about to say, I didn't know if
There's
there's
a
anything else.
personnel
that we
board
need-
meeting this week.
Okay, all right.
All right, Mayor?
I'm not really sure how the order of this went, so I just want to be clear. This does not eliminate the increase for fire, right?
Well, yes, today it
We'll
did.
adjust, it does not eliminate, but we'll adjust the plan, absolutely. So the plan that was presented at the last board meeting, we'll see some adjustments, 100%.
So we're moving forward with the adjustment for fire.
We are
We're gonna
moving-
move forward with the 3% COLA.
We are moving forward with the 3% COLA, and we are moving forward with a revised plan to present to the Personnel Board for consideration. that will come back to the council.
Okay, awesome. So just in case anybody's wondering, fire has not been left out of the table. We're coming back. We're gonna hit it hard. We're gonna go full force at it.
From a budget standpoint, if you would like for me to present the paid plan separately, I can do that. It'll probably require a special call again, or if you'd like it included with the total package, I can do it that way as well.
Can we not
I
just?
think we probably should have another special meeting.
Ow.
Cool.
Ow, can we do it on Mondays?
Easy enough.
We'll find a day.
Mondays.
All right, Mayor, anything else? All right, anything else from the council? All right, we'll stand adjourned, thanks.
Hey, Mr. Knight, are you in a position to where you can go to, the East Center